You are listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast with Buck Joffrey. Get ready to change your life.
Welcome, everybody. This is Buck Joffrey with the Wealth Formula Podcast coming to you from Montecito, California. And before I begin, I want to remind you that visit wealthformula.com if you're interested in some of the resources we have there. It's also where you want to go to if you're interested in signing up for some of our various lists, including the accredited investor list. That's where if you are interested in participating in some of the private offerings that come through that group, that's where you want to sign up. So you go to wealthformula.com, and if you're an accredited investor, then you go ahead and sign up for that, and then you get onboarded, because you do need to be an accredited investor. An accredited investor is something that you either are or you are not. It's not something you have to apply for. It's just defining you as somebody who makes $200,000 per year, has done so for at least 2 years, $300,000 if you're married, with a reasonable anticipation of doing so in the future, or you have a net worth of $1 million outside of your personal residence. Now, this year I think is going to be interesting. We've done some things in real estate. We've done some aviation things, and you might have already gotten notifications on those types of things because they are of a certain type of offering called a regulation D506C offering, which allows for general exposure. Like, you don't have to be an accredited investor to hear about those things. You just can't invest in them. You have to have a letter. But a lot of things that we do will be registered as regulation D506B offerings, and those you will never hear about them unless you're in this group. So go ahead and get in Investor Club and sign up for that as soon as possible. With that being said, let's talk about a specific topic today that comes up, and that is dual citizenship, Plan B, right? Question there. When I think about this stuff, let's take a step back, right? The two most powerful motivations of behavior are fear and greed. And if you haven't thought about that before, pay attention to the kinds of messagings you hear, especially in this alternative podcast ecosystem. And at the risk of offending gold bugs, how many times have you heard someone who sells precious metals on a podcast talking about the demise of the U.S. and the inevitability of the zombie apocalypse? Think that's just a coincidence? No. It's not just a coincidence, because the more you think about instability, the more you think that the world is about to go up in flames, the more likely you are to buy a type of asset that has been around for thousands of years and has survived every major catastrophe. Maybe that's a sale. Maybe I've just convinced you to buy gold if that's what you believe. But that's really kind of the idea behind a lot of that messaging, right? And similarly, a couple weeks ago, I had a guy on. Hopefully, you heard this. This guy wrote this book on Ray Dalio. And if you haven't heard that, make sure you go back and listen to it, because I thought it was just really interesting and fascinating. But anyway, Ray Dalio is this legendary hedge fund manager. He's written all these books on principles of investing and then principles in life and blah, 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 all this stuff. As it turns out, even though he is legendary and he's had some good years, most of them he's not beaten the S&P 500, right? And it turns out that he has been predicting the collapse of the American economy going on about 3 decades now. And maybe he believes that. I don't know. But one thing's for sure, that company line, so to speak, works for Ray Dalio, because he works with ultra-wealthy families. And ultra-wealthy families, I should say, I didn't really realize this until I was speaking to Zolfi, who's those of you who know him, he works with us on a number of these investments, and he used to manage a sovereign wealth fund in the Middle East, and before that he worked for J.P. Morgan and in London and in New York, and he has a massive exposure to these ultra high earning families and institutions and all that. But again, the thing that I learned from him is that they don't really care about big returns. It's not really what they're at. They just don't, they just care about not losing money. And beating the market is kind of an added plus. So if Ray Dalio is telling people that the world is going to hell and he manages money, then maybe people are thinking, well, maybe he's the guy to invest with, right? Because he's managing all this money and he thinks that the world's going to hell. So, well, He's Ray Dalio. I'm going to give him my money and hopefully he can save me. Now, there's also people out there talking about the need for a second passport in case the U.S. implodes. You know, the proverbial plan B, the escape hatch. After all, we have a divisive political system and an enormous amount of debt in our country. But I will say this, again, maybe I'm missing something, but the U.S. is still by far and away the biggest economy in the world, with by far the highest GDP, the best quality of life. We have the best universities in the world, the strongest military in the world. I don't know. If we can get through 1968, just look up 1968 and the turmoil this country was in back there, I think we're going to get through 2024 just fine. So in my humble opinion, a plan B is not going to get you out of harm's way, because if the U.S. goes down, there will be no place to hide. There will be none, okay? But there certainly are other reasons to get a second passport, right? Maybe you just want to make it easier to travel to certain countries. Maybe you want to benefit from low-cost health care. You know, you spend your life in the U.S. and then you go somewhere with socialized health care because you think that that's better. I personally don't think so, but I think some people get that sense. And you know, you can piss off the Europeans by using their health care after you've lived here your entire life and, you know, have an EU passport. Or maybe you just want to diversify your wealth and mitigate currency risk. I think that's actually a very reasonable consideration. I mean, owning, you know, real estate, you know, not super risky stuff. I'm just talking about, okay, maybe you own residential real estate or some high grade commercial real estate in another country. Maybe that is something that mitigates your currency risk, because there's no question the dollar has gotten weaker over time, various times, things like that. So that's another consideration. Another might be tax considerations. For most part, that's only going to be effective in Puerto Rico. It would require you to live there. That's something I'm just not interested in doing. Anyway, my advice, whatever you do, just don't get scared into it. It sounds like having a passport might also just be kind of fun, right? You got to be a jet setter. Maybe, again, there's some sound financial reasons to do it for your portfolio. But, you know, if you're going to do it for rational reasons. And in order to explore that possibility, this week's Wealth Formula podcast, I'm going to talk to a guy who works for a company that does this for a lot of executives and high net worth people. The company's called Latitude, and his name is John Green, and we'll have him right after these messages. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, my guest on Wealth Formula Podcast is John Green. He is one of the co-founders of Latitude, which is an interesting business which basically allows people to obtain dual citizenship and passports. They have over 5,000 clients, operate in over 20 countries worldwide, and they are a major player in this space. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Buck, for having me. Appreciate being here.
Let's talk a little bit about, you know, the big picture here. You know, I think you guys use this idea of location fluidity. That's what you call it. Why in particular do you suggest that, you know, high net worth individuals or, you know, business executives, or I guess in our case, you know, high paid professionals in general, why would they want to even consider dual citizenship with another country?
It's a great question, Buck. And what we're seeing is the smart money, the really ultra high net worth and the high net worth clients are coming to us looking for these solutions, holding a second citizenship. And why? It's really all about options and freedom. So not relying on a single government to look after you, and having the ability to reside in another country or continent for that matter, and when it comes to the EU. And so that's really what it comes down to, is having more options in life. And, you know, no one's sure what their home country is going to look like in 5, 10, 20 years from now. So let's set up some options for ourselves and our family members so they have that ability and flexibility to relocate to another country. And I use the example of, you know, at the height of COVID, unfortunately, many countries closed their borders specifically to Americans when, you know, it was running rampant.
Sure.
But those with a second citizenship didn't have that restriction. So they were freely able to travel. And I've had people contact us saying, hey, that time really cost us a lot of business because I have to go and meet people in my industry, and I wasn't permitted to do that because of my passport. But even having a second citizenship from a small, peaceful Caribbean country, it completely avoided that roadblock during that time. And that's really what our clients are doing. It's almost like a life insurance policy in your back pocket. You hope you never have to use it, but should the time come, you're certainly glad you had the foresight to obtain a second citizenship.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's sort of this, that idea. I mean, the second citizenship concept, and not suggesting you guys are this way, there is a certain zombie apocalypse fear-mongering element to some of the people who advocate for this. And so I assume that's not kind of your approach here.
No, not at all. Certainly, vocal people online who expose those or talk about those kind of ideas, but that's not where we're coming from whatsoever. We're all about providing for our clients more options in life. Again, providing the option to live and work, say in Europe, for their children.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
Let's talk about that specifically. Let's talk about Europe. That is a potentially a very attractive opportunity for people for a number of reasons, whether it's travel and also because, if you've got a passport for the EU, I mean, you're pretty much free for all of Europe except, the UK, right? So what are some of the big advantages? Let's first of all, I guess, just talk about, what people who maybe not business executives or have work specifically in the EU, but what kinds of reasons other than pure leisure would you want to potentially get a EU passport?
Certainly, it is a lifestyle play, but it's providing more options, as you identified. Once you're a citizen of an EU country, let's say Malta, maybe Spain, Portugal, you have the right to live and work in any EU country.
Yeah.
So if you want, as a Maltese citizen, if you want to live in France, Germany, Spain, you have that right. So certainly it provides a lot more areas where you can relocate to, whether that's temporary or full-time, permanent. And that's one of the biggest advantages. In terms of visa-free travel as well, the passport for an EU country affords a significant amount of visa-free travel, over 180 countries, that maybe the U.S. passport doesn't quite have the same countries. And so that opens up more doors for clients as well who do business in other parts of the world.
Do you have people who look at these as opportunities to potentially retire and take advantage of social services and things like that may be not available as readily for retirement in the U.S.?
They do, actually. People are looking maybe for the lifestyle, the retirement. So retiring in a warm climate, even a lower cost of living. But then they afford themselves of that public healthcare system as well, potentially, and not maybe right away, but in a few years. And I do know of people who have obtained citizenship of an EU country specifically for that. There's not just the investment categories where you invest in a country in return for citizenship or a residence permit, but there's of course citizenship by descent. And so those who have the lineage, maybe a parent, a grandparent, can go further back, great-great-grandparents, they can obtain citizenship of, say, Italy, and now afford themselves of that healthcare system, which is going to be far more affordable than, of course, the traditional, say, U.S. healthcare system.
Yeah. So let's talk about the financial stuff. So outside of potentially getting healthcare at a more reasonable cost, and you're older, and maybe maybe that for whatever reason that's of interest to you, you can do those kinds of things. But let's talk about potential advantages, I guess, for, say, the high net worth person, the person who's making decent amount of money. Is there any potential tax plays here in various? Not anything illegal, but anything that people are taking advantage of as it relates to tax law by having multiple passports.
Well, it does depend where the client is from. So, as you're well aware, I'm sure the Americans' is based on citizenship, not residency.
Right.
So, even if an American moves to another country, they're still filing their taxes every year. And if there's a double taxation treaty, then it can offset. But they're still having to do that. So for our American clientels, it's not a traditional tax play, maybe compared to some other countries, say a Canadian who wants to move to the Caribbean for a few years in a tax-friendly jurisdiction. That's certainly possible under the, say, Antigua Citizenship program. And then they can, alleviate themselves of the tax burden that they normally would face in Canada. But for our American clientele, it's not as much of a tax play just because of the way that the tax system is in place.
Does it open up more opportunity for ownership or investing in a particular country?
It certainly does. Of course, owning a second home in another country does come with restrictions in terms of how much time you can spend in that country. So if you were to buy a villa in Italy or in the south of France, you are restricted. Typically, it's 3 months out of a 6-month period you can stay there. So as a lot of clients are aiming towards retirement years and it's a lifestyle play, they want to spend more time in Europe. And that's only possible if they obtain a citizenship or perhaps a residence permit, which these programs that we offer can help.
Who's your typical, I know you've talked about this a little bit, but, in terms of business executives, in terms of high net worth, are these generally older people who are doing this, who are closer to retirement, or who are your typical clients in terms of demographics?
It is a real mix. I'd say we do have a majority of our clients are older, probably over 55, 60 in terms of where they're at in their life. Their children are perhaps in high school or just starting college, and these kind of programs have come on their radar and they're looking for it. But we still have a younger crowd as well. Those in their 20s and 30s, perhaps they've done well in cryptocurrency. They have some funds and now they want to live abroad. And so we do get a mix there, but certainly the vast majority of our clients are going to be slightly older with kids who are either still residing in the house or recently left.
What are some of the challenges or considerations that individuals should be aware of go down this route? And then they're looking for dual citizenship. What's some of the pitfalls there?
Well, there's two main types of programs that we offer. I should say three. The first is citizenship by investment. That's where you're contributing to a country or perhaps buying real estate, and subject to due diligence checks are issued a passport and citizenship. So that is typically the quickest way to obtain citizenship. There's also residence by investment, which in Europe are known as the golden visas. So those are offered by Portugal, Spain, and Greece, where you invest typically in real estate, sometimes a venture capital fund, and you acquire a residence permit. So that's not the same as citizenship. And some people don't quite understand the path that a residence permit, how you get to citizenship. So that's where we come in and we can explain what the path is to citizenship through those residency requirements, because it's not always straightforward. Sometimes there's, the requirement to reside in the country, either part-time or full-time. There can be language requirements as well with these golden visa programs. And the length of time can be anywhere kind of from 6 to 10 years for the residence programs when you're looking at a path to citizenship. So there's a lot of differences between the programs and nuances that we can help clients navigate when we sit down with them. We listen to what their ultimate goal is. Some clients want that citizenship, others just want a residence permit, and we can help steer them towards the right program to fit their goals and objectives. Yeah. And as I mentioned, the third type of program we offer is citizenship by descent. So those lucky enough to have that lineage, whether it's Italy, Poland, Ireland, for example, we can help them attain a second citizenship just based on who their relatives were. And that does tend to be a more cost-effective solution for clients. But not everybody, of course, is lucky enough to have the lineage to be able to go that route. How
does it work in terms of with regard to lineage? If you have a family and say only one spouse is of a certain lineage, does the other spouse automatically qualify? Do the kids qualify? How does that work?
It's a great question.
Well, the kids would qualify.
Yeah, and I'll use my personal example. So my wife was born in Poland. She immigrated to Canada when she was young, 7 years old. So she holds dual citizenship. So we're just in the process now of applying for our kids to have their Polish citizenship. For me, if I want Polish citizenship, it's a little bit harder. We'd have to move to Poland, live there for, I think, 3 years, advanced knowledge of the language. For me, it's not going to happen. Poland or Polish is a tough language, I find.
Yeah.
But it is fairly easy for us to move to a European country, whether it's Poland, Italy, France, and I can apply for a spousal visa. And that's typically for a 5-year period. It lets me live in that country full time. And then I can work on a path to citizenship, which is traditionally known as a naturalization. So I spend enough time in that country. Sometimes there'll be a language requirement, and then I can graduate to citizenship. So the fact that you're married to an EU citizen opens up doors for you as well. Not quite as powerful as having citizenship yourself, but it's fairly close.
When you have a married couple, I noticed there are, the first path you mentioned is buying into a particular country's citizenship. And let's take the example. I think I looked in Spain. I was kind of surprised. It was like $500,000, and I think Malta was 600,000, and if that's accurate. But is that just for one of the in a couple? Would that just be for one of them or for both?
Yeah, so there are two different programs there. Spain is a golden visa, residence by investment. So you invest in real estate from $500,000 and you will qualify for residence permit. And that is for both a couple or even like a family.
So that's just like a green card then, or kind of?
It's similar. So a green card is what's known as permanent residency. Most countries call it PR, permanent residency. In the UK, they call it indefinite leave to remain. US is a green card. So it's one step below citizenship. In Spain, you start off as a temporary visa, and after 5 years, you can graduate to PR. And then after another 5 years, you could graduate to citizenship should the requirements be met. But the 500,000 investment requirement in real estate, that can cover the whole family. So it's not like you're having to buy, one for the husband, one for the wife or anything like that. When it comes to Malta, it is the EU's only citizenship by investment program. And, the path to citizenship is typically 18 months. So it's quite quick relative to the golden visa programs or residency programs. But it is more costly. So you're typically starting from about 950,000 euro for a single applicant. Family of two is about 1,022,000, and goes up as you add dependents from there. So that's a more expensive program. It's not for everybody. But it's certainly the world's #1 citizenship by investment program.
Yeah, and so let's talk about what citizenship by investment actually even means, because when you think about $500,000 or 1.2 million or whatever it is that you're looking at here, this isn't just payments to the country. This is actually acquisition of investment property or of buying things. Or tell us what it entails exactly, that 500,000, or maybe it depends on which country you're talking about.
Yeah, very much depends. So let's just look at the Caribbean. There's 5 citizenship programs there. They're offered by Antigua, Dominica, Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Kitts and Nevis. So all 5 countries either have a contribution option where it's a one-time payment, non-recoverable to the government, and you can be granted citizenship, subject, of course, to their due diligence checks, or you can purchase real estate and qualify for citizenship. So a lot of people think about it, if we're going to buy a place in the Caribbean, why not buy in a country which also permits you to qualify for citizenship at the same time? And so, again, diversifying your real estate portfolio, and you get a lifestyle play at the same time by owning a villa, say, on a waterfront beach in Antigua. So that's the Caribbean. In Malta, though it's called the Citizenship by Investment Program, it is that 950,000, which I spoke about for a single applicant. It's a combination of a contribution to the government, as well as leasing property, due diligence fees, processing fees, et cetera, which take you to 950. That ends up being a non-recoverable cost for the applicant.
Got it. So So that is and then in addition to that, do you need to buy real estate in addition to that, or is that your cost?
That includes the cost of leasing a property for 6 years. So Malta is a bit of a more comprehensive or complex program compared to the Caribbean. And so they require you to lease a property for the first residence period, which is a 12-month period, and then additional 5 years after citizenship is granted.
So the EU is, for me, I think personally, I find it interesting, but, I'm not running out there to do it today. But what, when you talk about the Caribbean and some of these countries, what are the real motivations of getting citizenship there? Again, I do understand sort of the way, what if something happens and, the U.S., who's the most powerful country in the world, with the biggest economy in the world, suddenly goes to hell. I hear that and I'm like, okay, well then we're in big trouble everywhere and the Caribbean isn't going to help you. All right. So tell me what's the value proposition of the Caribbean, or you can use specific examples or specific countries if you'd like.
Certainly. So in the Caribbean, I'd say the motivations for clients, there's a small segment that are concerned about the future of the U.S., right? Federal debt, the diversive nature of the political climate right now and all of that. And they want that out. But other clients are looking at it, again, the Caribbean is quite affordable compared to Europe in terms of citizenship. And it's fairly quick, 6 to 12 months to get that second citizenship. So they get a second citizenship quickly, and now they can travel freely on that passport and not just rely on their American passport to travel. That's number one. Number two, again, it's a lifestyle play, owning real estate. If you're going to buy a place in, say, Miami, why not buy a place in Antigua? And it comes with the added benefit of a second citizenship. You get that lifestyle play, a nice place to go and reside for a few months out of the year, or eventually retire there, live there year round. Other clients, they're very wealthy. Perhaps their nanny comes from a country with a weak passport. And every time they want to travel together and bring their nanny, he has to apply for a visa. Yeah. Right. And so they are a benefactor and pay for her citizenship. And now she can travel, maybe go from something like 60 countries to 150 countries visa free. And it opens up doors. So we do have that as well, where an employer is paying for their employee to get a second citizenship.
What are some of the favorites countries, and maybe you can tell us what are some of the costs and unique advantages of those?
Certainly. So when you look at we'll start maybe with the EU. I'd say the most popular programs there with the golden visas have become Portugal and Spain.
They're both the 500,000.
Yeah, Portugal, now is 500,000, which is an investment into a venture capital fund. They have a number of different options to choose from, but that has been very popular with our American clientele over the years because they offer a flexible path to citizenship. So you're required to reside there for 7 days per year for a 5-year period, and then you're eligible for citizenship. You do need to show genuine ties to the country. So I do recommend clients start to spend more than just a week per year in the country as you get close to the 5-year mark. And you must have a basic understanding of the language. But it's Europe's most flexible path to citizenship. Sure. And so it's become very popular. Unfortunately, it's become a victim of its own success. So applications are quite backlogged right now with the government, 2 to 3 years to process. They're working on ways to improve that. They've made all the right signals that they're working on that, but it remains to be seen whether that is sped up. So we've seen that kind of demand now go to Spain. And Spain is an investment in real estate still. Portugal used to have real estate, not anymore. They got rid of it. And so in Spain, it's an investment in real estate from 500,000. It can be in more than one property as long as the total investment is 500,000 unencumbered. And again, you can lease those properties out. You can earn rental income on them, whether it's Airbnb or long-term tenants. You have that option. So, and then
but there's not an additional fee on top of the 500 that's not refundable, or?
There are some costs. I would say Portugal has quite a high application costs compared to Spain.
Okay.
Spain is quite reasonable. In Spain, you do have typically a transfer tax on the real estate. So it varies by city, but let's say on a 500,000 property, it'll be 50,000 typically. But what's great about Spain is they're very efficient. So the whole process can take 3 to 6 months. So for clients that want something sooner compared to Portugal, Spain is a great option for them.
So if you're an American, and maybe I just haven't been to Europe long enough to have this problem, but I mean, why would you even, like, if you're an American, how long can you stay in the EU without a visa?
3 months out of a 6-month period.
Okay. I've never tried that, so I haven't really had any issues. So if you're really looking to be there more, that's really kind of where this might play. I'll ask you about, and I don't know if this is something you guys work on at all, but there's always people talking about Puerto Rico, particularly in the crypto sphere, where people are making a bunch of money. And do you guys do anything with Puerto Rico, and maybe talk about a little bit about why Puerto Rico is attractive for people?
Yeah, we don't offer it directly, but from what I've heard from talking with clients who are looking at it, it's really a tax play with the 4% tax rate there. My understanding, and this is talking with clients who have looked at it themselves, is the challenge is finding somewhere to live.
Yeah.
Is finding that house. So there are a few really nice neighborhoods, kind of gated communities, but the real estate turns over very quickly if it does at all.
Yeah.
And so they're typically a place will go on sale, it's gone the next day and way over asking. And so they've found it a challenge to find somewhere suitable enough for their kind of standards, I would say, where they can live their, full-time basis. That's the challenge. Obviously, from a tax advantage, it has many there in Puerto Rico with a lower tax rate. But from a lifestyle perspective and finding that place, that's where I've heard is a challenge for our clients.
So where do you guys come into all of this? Obviously, each country has their own guidelines, their own, their own investment levels. Why would somebody not go directly to the embassy or the consul and start the process and instead go through Latitude?
That's a great question. It does depend on the country. So some countries require you to work with a licensed agent. So that's like Malta Citizenship program. You must be licensed, which we are. Same in the Caribbean. We're international marketing agents, so we've been vetted and signed off by the government to be able to offer their programs to our clients. So we're well positioned to assist clients. Other programs, you can try it yourself, but there are pitfalls. And I'll give you an example. We had a client call us up and say, I've been rejected for my Spain Golden Visa. And I was surprised. I say, why? Because the way we closed on our property, it made us look like my wife and I only invested $250 each, and we were separate rather than the 500,000 requirement.
Right.
So the only way to fix that was for one to sell to the other. And that ended up, with all the transfer tax and fees, it probably cost them an extra 50,000 euros mistake. So that's where we come in, beforehand and explain how to best, close on that property and make sure that it's done in the proper way so that you will qualify for that golden visa. And there's countless examples of like that, where you want to pick the right service provider who has the experience, the track record to assist the clients and knows the ins and outs of the application process.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, there's smaller providers that do maybe 3, 4, 5 applications a year, and they're not used to any kind of things that pop up that they're not able to handle.
Right.
And so that's really where we come in and help guide the client in an expert manner.
And how do you guys charge? Do you charge based on a commission amount, or is there a fixed cost? I mean, kind of give a sense of what the cost is for that.
Certainly. So we always meet with clients. We don't charge for that. We'll give them, an overview of the landscape of available programs, and they'll state their objectives, their goals, and we can kind of help steer them in the right direction. Should they choose to work with us, we of course run a background check on them before accepting them as a client. So one, make sure they have a high probability to be accepted for the program, and two, they're not a reputational risk to our firm. For our American clients, 95% pass with flying colors, but we do reject, say, 2 to 3% of prospective clients.
Sure.
And then our fee structure varies, depending on the program. Caribbean versus, say, Europe, golden visas versus citizenship. But generally, we start at about $20,000 US for our fees, and goes up depending on the program.
Got it. How do people learn more?
Great. Yeah. Well, you can visit us at latitudeworld.com. So you'll have all of our contact information there. I'm on there under the team page. You'll see my contact details as well. And we have overviews of all the programs that we offer. And of course, if clients want to get a hold of us, they can to reach out on our website and contact us directly. We'd be happy to meet with you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Buck. Really appreciate you having me on your show. And have a great day.
You too. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, sounds like fun, right? So if you're interested in doing this, then check it out. He didn't really talk so much about the Puerto Rico option, and I won't go into that too much. But if you don't have a lot of ties to the U.S. that you have to have, or maybe your kids are grown up, whatever, maybe you got some big capital gains and stuff like that, and you don't mind living in Puerto Rico for 2 years. I think it's 2 years. But anyway, look it up, because that is actually something else that is a real consideration. In fact, Puerto Rico has been nicknamed Crypto Rico because of the number of crypto millionaires that have moved there. And that's presumably why this guy's talking about the difficulty for housing. So that's it for me this week on Wealth Formula Podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed it. This is Buck Joffrey signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast. Visit us on the web at wealthformula.com. The information contained in this podcast are opinions, not fact. As always, consult your own financial team before making any investment. See you next time.